The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute professional financial, career, or legal advice. Scholarship criteria, availability, and federal regulations regarding educational funding are subject to change and vary by state and institution. The strategies discussed are based on historical trends and case studies of successful applicants. Viewers are strongly advised to conduct their own due diligence, verify all deadlines with official awarding bodies, and consult with a certified financial aid officer or educational consultant before making significant financial or academic commitments. By the time you finish watching the first 3 minutes of this video, the total student loan debt in the United States will have increased by approximately $1 million. As we navigate the economic landscape of 2026, the average cost of a 4-year degree at a private institution has climbed toward a staggering $250,000. Most people look at those numbers and see a wall. They see a future defined by decades of interest payments, high-stress careers just to keep their heads above water, and a dream that feels more like a financial trap. But here is the controversial truth that the traditional education system rarely emphasizes. There is a massive, decentralized pool of over $100 billion in private scholarship funding available right now, and a significant portion of it goes completely unawarded every single year. You have been told that scholarships are a Hunger Games-style competition reserved exclusively for the valedictorians, the star quarterbacks, or the mathematical prodigies. That is a fundamental misunderstanding of the American educational ecosystem. While the headlines focus on the elite few who secure full-ride packages to Ivy League schools, there is a sprawling middle class of scholarships that are looking for average students with specific hobbies, unique heritage, niche volunteer experiences, or even just the persistence to fill out a form that everyone else was too lazy to open. The problem isn't a lack of money. It is a massive failure in the distribution of information. You are not failing to find scholarships because you aren't good enough. You are failing because you are using an outdated map to navigate a landscape that has shifted entirely toward the digital, the niche, and the hyper-specific. This video is the first part of a 10-part masterclass designed to dismantle the barriers between you and a debt-free education. We are going to solve the primary problem that plagues every beginner: the "where do I even start?" paralysis. Today, we are moving past the superficial advice of "just Google it" and diving into the structural mechanics of how student aid actually functions in the modern era. We are going to address the historical trends that show why traditional search methods are failing and provide the framework for a scholarship search strategy that treats this process like a professional operation rather than a hobby. By the end of this deep dive, you will understand the difference between institutional, federal, and private aid, and you will have the psychological shift required to stop viewing scholarships as a lottery and start viewing them as a competitive market where you are the primary asset. To understand where we are going, we have to look at the historical data. Over the last 2 decades, the rate of tuition increase has consistently outpaced the rate of inflation, often by double or triple. In 2026, the cost of attendance is no longer just about tuition. It includes astronomical housing costs, digital resource fees, and the general cost of living in university hubs. However, the private sector has responded. Corporations, nonprofits, and private family foundations have increased their scholarship outlays to record highs. Why? Because in a hyper-competitive global economy, these organizations need specialized talent, and they are willing to pay for the privilege of branding themselves to the next generation of leaders. The issue is that these organizations often have terrible marketing. A local construction guild might have a $5,000 scholarship for the child of a tradesperson who wants to study architecture, but if they only post it on a dusty bulletin board or a 1990s-era website, that money sits idle. We need to talk about the billion-dollar myth. You might have seen clickbait articles claiming that billions in scholarships go unclaimed. While some of that is hyperbole, the core of the statement is backed by historical trends in the nonprofit sector. Many scholarships have such hyper-specific criteria that the applicant pool is naturally small. For example, case studies have shown scholarships specifically for students of specific ethnic descents from particular counties who intend to major in niche fields like pomology, the study of fruit. If only 3 people apply, your odds aren't 1 in a million, they are 1 in 3. The beginner's mistake is only applying for the big box scholarships, the ones offered by massive beverage companies or tech giants that receive 50,000 applications for 5 slots. We are going to teach you how to find the hidden market, where the competition is thin and the decision makers are human beings, not algorithms. The psychological barrier is the first thing we must break down. Most students suffer from what we call application fatigue before they even begin. They see a long essay prompt and a request for 3 letters of recommendation and they decide it isn't worth the effort for $1,000. This is a massive mathematical error. If it takes you 5 hours to craft a perfect application for a $1,000 scholarship, and you win it, you have just earned $200 per hour. There is no part-time job available to a student in 2026 that pays that kind of hourly rate. We are going to reframe your time as your greatest investment. This masterclass is about building a system so that those 5 hours eventually shrink to 1 hour through the power of modular application design, which we will cover in the coming segments. We also have to address the reality of financial aid displacement. This is a critical technical detail that many beginners overlook. Sometimes, winning a private scholarship can actually cause your university to reduce the institutional aid they were going to give you. This is a potential outcome that requires a specific communication strategy with the Financial Aid Office. We will go into the step-by-step details of how to ask the displacement question to ensure that the money you win actually stays in your pocket, rather than just saving the university money. This level of depth is what separates a viral guide from a generic list of tips. The promise of this 10-part series is not that you will wake up tomorrow with a check for $50,000. The promise is that you will move from a state of confusion and hope to a state of clarity and execution. We are going to build a scholarship funnel. Imagine a wide net at the top, collecting every possible lead, and a narrow, efficient process at the bottom that produces high-quality, high-probability applications. We are going to cover the technology you need, the 2026 AI-driven search tools that are actually worth your time, and the human factor that still dominates the committee rooms where these financial decisions are made. You are currently standing at the base of a very steep mountain, looking at a price tag for your future that seems impossible to pay. But remember, the system of American higher education is not a monolithic block. It is a collection of thousands of individual doors. Some are locked tight, but many are standing wide open, waiting for someone to simply walk through them with the right credentials and the right story. Part 1 of this journey is about deciding to be the person who does the work that others find too tedious. In the world of scholarships, tedious is where the profit is. We are going to transform you from a passive seeker into a strategic hunter. In the next section, we will begin the deep dive into the scholarship ecosystem, breaking down the 4 major pillars of funding and showing you exactly which ones you should prioritize based on your specific profile. We are moving away from the one-size-fits-all approach and toward a bespoke application strategy. This is a masterclass, and your education, both the one you're heading toward and the one you're receiving right now, starts today. You have the potential to change your financial trajectory entirely, provided you are willing to look where others are not and speak the language that scholarship committees are desperate to hear. Let's get to work. To begin our deep dive into the 2026 scholarship landscape, we must first categorize the chaos. If you treat every scholarship as the same, you are effectively trying to find a needle in a hayfield without knowing what a needle looks like. We have to break the funding world into 4 distinct pillars: federal, state, institutional, and private. Understanding these pillars is the difference between a student who gets a few $100s for books and a student who secures a comprehensive funding package that covers tuition, housing, and even a living stipend. Let us start with Pillar 1, the federal foundation. In 2026, the primary gateway to all federal funding remains the free application for federal student aid, commonly known as the FAFSA. Many beginners make the catastrophic mistake of assuming the FAFSA is only for students from low-income households. Historical trends show that the FAFSA is actually the prerequisite for almost all forms of aid, including merit-based scholarships and federal work-study programs. Even if your household income is in the top bracket, the FAFSA acts as a financial identity card. Without it, you are effectively invisible to the federal government and most university financial aid offices. In the current economic climate, the FAFSA calculates what is known as the Student Aid Index, or SAI. Imagine if a student named Alex is applying for college this year. Alex's family makes a comfortable middle-class income, but when they look at the sticker price of a flagship state university, which has now crossed the $35,000 mark per year for in-state residents, they feel a sense of dread. By completing the FAFSA early, meaning as soon as the window opens in the final quarter of the preceding year, Alex's family establishes their SAI. This number isn't just about the Pell Grant, which for 2026 has seen incremental adjustments to keep pace with the rising cost of living. It is about qualifying for subsidized federal loans and work-study positions that pay significantly higher than local minimum wages due to federal subsidies. Moving to Pillar 2, state-level power moves. This is where the geography of your residency becomes a financial asset. Historical trends indicate that state-funded scholarships are some of the most overlooked resources because they are poorly marketed outside of high school guidance offices. For instance, consider a case study of a student in Georgia using the Hope or Zell Miller scholarships, or a student in California utilizing the Cal Grant system. In 2026, many states have introduced middle-class scholarships that specifically target the gap where federal aid drops off but private tuition is still unaffordable. The step-by-step process for Pillar 2 involves visiting your state's Department of Higher Education website. You aren't just looking for grants, you are looking for legislative scholarships or niche state grants for specific majors. Some states are currently facing massive shortages in nursing, teaching, and cybersecurity. Historical data suggests that states will often provide service-cancelable loans, which are effectively scholarships that are forgiven if you agreed to work in that state for 2 to 4 years after graduation. Imagine if you could have $20,000 of your tuition covered simply by agreeing to live and work in a city you already love. This is not a dream. It is a strategic alignment of your career goals with state economic needs. Pillar 3 is the institutional goldmine, and this is where the real money is hidden. In 2026, the average private university discount rate has hovered near 55%. This means that for every dollar a university says it charges, it is actually giving back 55 cents in the form of institutional aid. Why? Because universities are in a fierce competition for rankings and prestige. They use their multi-billion-dollar endowments to buy the best students. Imagine a student named Sarah who has a 3.8 GPA and a strong community service record. Sarah applies to a mid-tier private college with a $75,000 annual sticker price. Most beginners would see that number and close the tab. But Sarah understands the institutional matrix. She looks at the college's common data set, a document every university publishes that details exactly how they distribute their money. Sarah sees that this specific college prioritizes geographic diversity. Since Sarah is applying from a state that is underrepresented at that college, the institution offers her a $30,000 provost scholarship and another $10,000 in departmental aid for her interest in environmental science. Suddenly, the $75,000 school is cheaper than her local state university. This is the power of understanding institutional motives. The step-by-step detail here is to contact the admissions department directly, not the financial aid office, to ask about merit-based automatic consideration. Many schools in 2026 have moved toward a model where your application for admission is your application for scholarships. If you submit your application by the early action deadline, usually November 1st or 15th, you are automatically entered into the pool for the highest tier of institutional funding. Waiting until the regular decision deadline in January can be a $10,000 mistake. Finally, we have Pillar 4, the Wild West of private scholarships. This is the category most people think of when they hear the word scholarship, and it is also where the most time is wasted. Private scholarships are offered by companies, nonprofits, and individuals. To succeed here, you must ignore the big 3 national scholarships that everyone and their cousin is applying for. Instead, look for the local loophole. Case studies of successful applicants show a high correlation between winning and hyperlocal focus. Imagine if you go to your local community foundation's website. These foundations often manage hundreds of small scholarships left by local families. One might be for a student who played varsity soccer. Another might be for someone whose parents are members of the local Rotary Club. These awards range from $500 to $5,000. Because the applicant pool is restricted to a single county or even a single high school, the historical trends show that the probability of a potential outcome in your favor is exponentially higher. In 2026, we also see the rise of corporate talent pipelines. Companies like major logistics firms, tech conglomerates, and even national grocery chains offer scholarships to their employees and their employees' children. If you or your parents work for a large corporation, the first place you should look is the internal HR portal. These are often non-competitive or low competition because people simply forget they exist. To navigate these 4 pillars effectively, you must treat your scholarship search like a business operation. You need a centralized database. A simple spreadsheet will do, where you track the pillar, the deadline, the requirements, and the contact person. You are not just a student, you are a researcher. In the modern era, the data is available, but the filter is missing. You are that filter. As we move forward, you might be wondering, how do I actually stand out when everyone is using the same search engines? Or what happens when I find a scholarship but the essay prompt feels impossible to answer? We have only scratched the surface of the ecosystem. The real magic happens when you learn how to bridge these pillars to create a stacked funding model. But before you can stack your funding, you have to master the one thing that stops 90% of applicants in their tracks: the application machine. Most students spend weeks finding scholarships and only minutes applying to them. That is the reverse of what successful hunters do. In the next part, we are going to dive into the scholarship audit, the process of building your personal brand and your digital portfolio so that when you hit Pillar 3 and Pillar 4, you aren't just another name in a database. You are the only logical choice for the committee. We are going to look at why your social media footprint in 2026 might be the very thing that earns you or costs you a $20,000 check. Do you know what a scholarship committee sees when they Google your name? Because they will Google it. And what they find will either validate your essay or expose your gaps. We are about to go deep into the mechanics of the perfect profile. The process of creating the perfect profile starts with a brutal, objective assessment of your digital footprint. In 2026, the Scholarship Committee is not just a group of people sitting in a wood-paneled room reading paper files. They are savvy investigators who will likely spend at least 5 minutes researching your name online before they even finish reading your personal statement. This is known as the digital audit, and it is the first step in building a profile that converts applications into funding. Imagine a student named Marcus from Houston, Texas. Marcus is a stellar student with a passion for renewable energy and a 3.9 GPA. He has spent hundreds of hours volunteering for local environmental groups. However, if a scholarship committee Googles Marcus and finds a series of unprofessional social media posts from 3 years ago, or a lack of any professional presence whatsoever, his chances of a favorable outcome diminish instantly. Historical trends indicate that selection committees increasingly view a student's online presence as an extension of their character. To perform your own audit, start by opening an incognito browser window and searching your full name alongside your city and school. If the results are non-existent, you are a ghost, which suggests a lack of engagement with the modern world. If the results are unprofessional, you are a risk. Your goal is to curate a digital identity that screams investment-grade candidate. This means updating your LinkedIn profile, even as a high school senior or college freshman. In 2026, LinkedIn has become the professional standard for students to showcase their proof of work. Your headline shouldn't just say student. It should say aspiring environmental engineer and community advocate. Your About section should be a concise version of your mission statement. You want the committee to find a professional headshot, a list of your projects, and endorsements from teachers or community leaders. Beyond the digital cleanup, we must address the impact portfolio. The traditional resume is dead in the scholarship world. Committees in 2026 are tired of seeing a list of clubs where you were just a member. They are looking for active leadership and quantifiable impact. Case studies of successful applicants show that those who use data to describe their achievements have a higher rate of success. Instead of saying you volunteered at a local food bank, your profile should state that you coordinated a logistics system that increased food distribution efficiency by 20%, serving an additional 200 families per month. This shift from passive participation to active contribution is what separates a beginner from a professional applicant. Imagine if Marcus didn't just join the Eco Club. Imagine if he started a district-wide composting initiative that diverted 5 tons of waste from landfills in 2025. That is a story a committee can get behind because it shows a return on their investment. This brings us to the brag sheet, a tool that is absolutely essential for securing high-quality letters of recommendation. You cannot expect a teacher or a mentor to remember every single one of your accomplishments, especially in a year where educators are more stretched than ever. The step-by-step process involves creating a one-page document that you hand to your recommender at least 6 weeks before the deadline. This document should not just list your grades. It should highlight specific anecdotes that the recommender can use to illustrate your character. If you are asking your chemistry teacher for a letter, your brag sheet should remind them of the time you stayed late for 3 weeks to help a struggling peer understand organic compounds, or the time you took the initiative to lead a lab group through a particularly complex experiment. You are essentially ghostwriting the themes of your own recommendation, ensuring that the letter is not a generic template, but a powerful testimonial of your specific strengths. We also need to discuss the diversity of excellence. In 2026, scholarship committees have shifted away from valuing the well-rounded student who does 10 things adequately. Instead, they are looking for the angular student who does 1 or 2 things exceptionally well. This is a crucial distinction. If your profile shows that you are a varsity athlete, a debate captain, a violinist, and a math tutor, you might appear scattered. However, if your profile shows that you are a dedicated robotics enthusiast who also teaches coding to underprivileged youth, you have a clear, focused narrative. This focus allows the committee to visualize exactly where their money is going. They aren't just funding a student, they are funding a specific future. Consider the hardship to resilience arc, which is a significant factor in 2026 scholarship evaluations. Many students feel they don't have a sad enough story to win scholarships. This is a misconception. Committees are not looking for tragedy for the sake of tragedy. They are looking for how you navigated a challenge, any challenge, and what you learned from it. This is where your soft skills evidence comes into play. Are you the first in your family to navigate the American higher education system? That shows initiative. Did you have to work a part-time job 20 hours a week while maintaining your grades? That shows time management and grit. These are the qualities that historical data suggests lead to long-term academic success, and committees are desperate to find them. Step by step, you need to build what we call the Scholarship Master Folder. This is a cloud-based directory containing your audited resume, your impact portfolio, a high-resolution professional headshot, your official and unofficial transcripts, and 3 versions of your brag sheet tailored to different types of recommenders. One for academic, one for community service, and one for character. Having these assets ready in 2026 allows you to respond to opportunities in minutes rather than days. Speed is a competitive advantage. When a local flash scholarship opens up with a 48-hour deadline, most students will panic and start from scratch. You will simply pull from your master folder, make minor tweaks, and submit while they are still looking for their login credentials. The final piece of the perfect profile is the alignment factor. You must be able to prove that your goals align with the mission of the awarding organization. If a foundation is dedicated to promoting literacy in rural areas, and your profile is focused entirely on urban high-tech development, there is a mismatch. This doesn't mean you should lie. It means you should highlight the parts of your profile that resonate with that specific audience. If our character Marcus is applying for a scholarship from a local utility company, he should emphasize his understanding of the power grid. If he is applying to a national conservation group, he should emphasize his hands-on field work in Texas state parks. By the time you have completed this audit and built your master folder, you will feel a psychological shift. You are no longer a beggar asking for money. You are a professional presenting a compelling case for a strategic partnership. You have the data, you have the proof of impact, and you have a digital presence that reinforces every word of your application. But even the most perfect profile can be rendered useless if it is paired with a mediocre essay. In fact, in the 2026 landscape where AI-generated content is everywhere, the human element in your writing has never been more valuable or more scrutinized. How do you write a personal statement that sounds so authentically you that an algorithm couldn't possibly have written it? How do you hook a weary scholarship reader who has already looked at 500 applications that morning? And most importantly, how do you turn a standard 300-word prompt into a narrative that makes the committee feel like they would be making a mistake by not choosing you? In the next part, we are going to break down the narrative engine, a step-by-step system for crafting essays that don't just tell your story, but sell your potential with such clarity that the funding becomes a natural conclusion. We are going into the specific linguistic triggers and structural secrets that the top 1% of applicants use to bypass the noise and speak directly to the heart of the selection committee. The transition from a professional profile to a winning narrative requires you to master the art of the human-centric essay. In 2026, we are living in an era where generative artificial intelligence can produce a grammatically perfect, 5-paragraph essay in roughly 3 seconds. Scholarship committees are fully aware of this. Consequently, historical trends in selection criteria have shifted toward valuing what we call the human salt, those specific, irreducible, and sometimes messy details of your life that an algorithm cannot simulate. To build your narrative engine, you must move beyond the standard resume prose and into the realm of strategic storytelling. Imagine a student named Elena from Phoenix, Arizona. Elena is applying for a scholarship funded by a national telecommunications company intended for students pursuing careers in digital infrastructure. Most applicants will write an essay about how much they like computers or how important the internet is for the future. That is a generic narrative. Elena, however, uses the in media residential hook. She starts her essay in the middle of a specific moment, The sound of the monsoon rain hitting the roof of her apartment in 2024 during a week-long power outage. She describes the specific frustration of trying to complete her coding homework on a dying laptop while tethered to a weak cellular signal. She doesn't just say she wants to be an engineer. She shows the exact moment she realized that digital equity is a physical necessity, not a luxury. By starting with a sensory detail, the smell of the rain, the dim light of a candle, the ticking of a battery percentage, she anchors her essay in a reality that feels authentic. The first structural secret of the narrative engine is the vulnerability paradox. Many beginners believe they must appear perfect to win money. They present themselves as a finished product who has never failed. Case studies of successful recipients in 2026 suggest the opposite. Committees are looking for resilience, and you cannot demonstrate resilience without first demonstrating a point of pressure or failure. The goal is to share a challenge not to garner sympathy, but to provide a baseline for your growth. If you faced a significant academic setback in your sophomore year, do not hide it. Instead, document the step-by-step process of how you rebuilt your study habits, sought out tutoring, and eventually mastered the subject. This transformation is what committees are actually funding. They are investing in your ability to handle future challenges at the university level. To ensure your essay passes the 2026 AI detection filters, both the software and the human ones, you must incorporate quantifiable impact statements paired with personal reflection. This is the PART model: problem, action, result, and transformation. Let us apply this to Elena. The problem was the lack of reliable tech support for elderly residents in her apartment complex. The action was Elena organizing a weekly tech clinic in the community room. The result was that 34 seniors learned how to use telehealth services and connect with distant family members. But the most important part is the transformation. Elena must explain how this experience changed her view of her career. She realized that technical skill is useless if it is not accessible to the most vulnerable members of society. This specific, localized example provides the human salt that makes her application unforgettable. Another linguistic trigger you should utilize is the language of the donor. Every scholarship provider has a mission statement, a history, and a set of core values. If you are applying for a scholarship from a local veterans organization, your essay should emphasize concepts like duty, service, and community continuity. If the scholarship is from a modern tech startup, the language should lean toward innovation, disruption, and scalability. This is not about being disingenuous. It is about highlighting the facets of your personality that align with their goals. Historical trends show that committees are subconsciously drawn to candidates who speak their dialect. Before you write a single word, spend 30 minutes researching the founder of the scholarship. What were their struggles? What did they value? If the founder was a self-made entrepreneur who started in a garage, mention your own small-scale projects or your willingness to build something from nothing. Let us look at the thesaurus trap. Many students believe that using complex, academic language will make them appear more intelligent. In reality, in a sea of applications, simplicity and clarity are your best friends. A professional scriptwriter knows that the best way to keep an audience engaged is to use active verbs and concrete nouns. Instead of saying, "I was involved in the implementation of a new recycling program," say, "I launched a recycling program that collected 400 pounds of plastic in its first month." The second version is shorter, punchier, and far more impressive. Places you as the protagonist of the action. In 2026, committees are looking for leaders, not observers. The step-by-step process for the final polish involves the read-aloud test. After you have written your draft, read it out loud to a friend or record yourself and play it back. If a sentence feels long-winded or if you find yourself stumbling over certain words, those are the areas where your reader will lose interest. You should also check for the "so what" factor. Every paragraph should answer the question, "So what?" If you mention that you enjoy playing the piano, you must follow it up with how the discipline of daily practice has prepared you for the rigors of a pre-medical curriculum. If you don't connect your hobbies and experiences to your future potential, you are wasting valuable word count. Historical data from 2025 and early 2026 indicates that students who include a future casting section in their conclusion see a higher rate of success. This is where you paint a vivid picture of what the potential outcomes will be if you receive this funding. Don't just say the money will help you pay for college. Describe the specific research lab you want to join, the internship you plan to pursue, or the community problem you intend to solve after graduation. You want the committee to feel like they are not just giving you a check, but that they are launching a rocket. They want to be part of your success story. Finally, we must address the sheer volume of applications you will need to produce. Writing a unique essay for every single scholarship is a recipe for burnout. Instead, you should create a modular essay system. Identify the 3 or 4 core stories of your life, your biggest challenge, your greatest achievement, your community involvement, and your long-term vision. Write these as high-quality 500-word blocks. When you find a new scholarship, you can mix and match these modules, tailoring the introductions and conclusions to fit the specific prompt. This efficiency allows you to apply to 10 times as many opportunities without sacrificing quality. As you master the narrative engine, you will start to see your own life through a different lens. You are no longer just a student. You are a series of compelling stories and valuable assets. You have the tools to bypass the noise and speak directly to the hearts of the people holding the pen. But even the best essay in the world can be defeated by a simple administrative error or a missed window of opportunity. Most students think the deadline listed on the website is the only date that matters. They are wrong. There is a hidden calendar of shadow deadlines and priority windows that can make or break your entire strategy. In the next part, we are going to dive into the logistics of the scholarship search, including the secret timing of the 2026 academic cycle and the stacking techniques that allow you to layer multiple small awards into one massive financial shield. We are moving from the art of the story to the science of the system. The first rule of the scholarship system in 2026 is that the date you see on a website is almost always the late date. If you are looking at a final deadline of March 15th, historical trends indicate that the vast majority of the funding has already been provisionally allocated to those who hit the priority deadline, which likely passed in November or December of the previous year. To master the logistics of this cycle, you must understand the concept of priority filing. Imagine a student named David from a small suburb outside of Detroit. David is a high-achieving student who plans to study mechanical engineering. In the fall of 2025, David assumes he has plenty of time because most of his college applications aren't due until January. This is a critical mistake. By waiting until January to look for scholarships, David has already missed the institutional priority windows for nearly 70% of the merit-based aid at his top 3 university choices. In the 2026 academic landscape, many universities use a front-heavy funding model. They want to secure their top-tier candidates as early as possible to stabilize their enrollment projections. For a beginner, the step-by-step detail here is to build a master calendar that tracks 3 distinct dates for every single opportunity: the opening date, the priority deadline, and the final deadline. You should aim to submit your application within the first 20% of the open window. Case studies of successful applicants show that early submissions are often reviewed with more attention and a fresher set of eyes than those that arrive in the final 48-hour rush, when systems are prone to technical lag and committees are suffering from decision fatigue. Once you have mastered the timeline, you must implement the stacking method. Most beginners are looking for the one big win, the single scholarship that covers everything. While those exist, they are statistically rare. The more effective strategy is building a financial shield through the aggregation of smaller, niche awards. This is known as scholarship stacking. Consider David again. Instead of only applying for the national $10,000 awards, David spends his time hunting for what we call micro-scholarships. He finds a $500 award from his local credit union, a $1,000 grant from a regional engineering society, and a $2,000 scholarship from a local manufacturing company that his grandfather used to work for. Individually, these amounts seem small. However, when David stacks them, he has effectively covered his entire room and board for the first year. However, you must be aware of the financial aid displacement trap, a technical hurdle that requires careful navigation. Historical trends show that some universities will see your outside scholarships and use them to reduce the institutional grants they were already planning to give you. This means if you win a $2,000 private scholarship, the school might just take away $2,000 of their own money, leaving your out-of-pocket cost exactly the same. To avoid this, you need a specific communication strategy. Before you report your outside winnings, contact the financial aid office and ask for their policy on outside resource integration. Look for schools that have a scholarship-friendly policy, meaning they apply your outside awards to your unmet need or your student loan portion first, rather than reducing your grants. In 2026, many students are successfully negotiating this by providing the university with a detailed breakdown of their additional expenses, such as a higher-than-average cost for specialized software or necessary medical equipment, which allows the school to increase the total cost of attendance and make room for the stacked scholarships. To manage a high volume of applications, potentially 50 or more over a 6-month period, you need a professional tracking infrastructure. This is not something you can keep in your head or a paper notebook. In 2026, the most efficient students use automated spreadsheets integrated with their digital calendars. Your tracking system should include columns for the scholarship name, the award amount, the specific essay prompt used, the status of your letters of recommendation, and a post-submission column for follow-up notes. You should also include a source column to track which search engines or databases are providing the highest quality leads. This allows you to prune your search strategy over time, focusing only on the platforms that yield results. Speaking of search platforms, the 2026 landscape requires a more sophisticated approach than a simple keyword search. You need to use Boolean operators to filter out the noise. Most students search for engineering scholarships. This returns millions of results, most of which are irrelevant. A professional hunter will search for terms like engineering scholarship in Michigan and first generation not graduate. This specific string of commands tells the search engine to only show undergraduate awards for first-generation students in a specific state. By narrowing the field, you decrease the quantity of leads but exponentially increase the quality. Step by step, you should develop 5 to 10 of these Boolean strings based on your unique profile, your heritage, your hobbies, your intended career, and your geographic location. We must also discuss the role of the high-yield period. Historically, the months of October through December are the most critical for institutional and large-scale private aid, while January through March is the peak season for local and community-based awards. Many students burn all their energy in the fall and quit just as the local opportunities are opening up. You need to pace your efforts. Think of this as a marathon with 2 distinct sprints. The first sprint is for the high-prestige, high-dollar awards that require long-form essays and multiple interviews. The second sprint is for the bread and butter, local awards that might only require a short personal statement and a copy of your transcript. Case studies show that the second wave applicants often have less competition because their peers have already succumbed to application fatigue. Let us look at a scenario where a student named Maya from New Jersey uses this system. Maya sets a goal to submit 2 applications every Sunday afternoon. This consistency prevents the process from feeling overwhelming. Because she started in September, by December she has already submitted 16 applications. When her first rejection letter arrives in January, she doesn't panic. Why? Because she has 20 more applications currently in the pending stage. This is the psychological benefit of the system. It removes the emotional weight of any single rejection because you are operating at scale. In 2026, the potential outcomes for a student who submits 40 well-targeted applications are vastly different from those who submit 5 perfect ones. As you build this system, you will begin to notice a phenomenon we call the information snowball. The more you research, the more you find hidden connections. You'll find that a scholarship you applied for in October has a sister foundation that offers a smaller award in April. You'll find that a professional organization you joined for a scholarship application offers free webinars that give you more impact data for your next essay. This is how you move from a beginner to a master. You are no longer just looking for money. You are building a network of information that sustains your entire educational journey. But what happens when you actually get the call? What do you do when you are named a finalist for a major award, and you are invited to a virtual or in-person interview? In 2026, the interview is the final gatekeeper, and it is where many high GPA students crumble, because they haven't prepared for the specific behavioral questions that scholarship committees love to ask. It is not about your resume anymore. It is about your presence, your poise, and your ability to articulate your why under pressure. In the next part, we are going to dive into the interview blueprint. We will look at the 5 most common questions that catch students off guard and the specific 2026 tech protocol for nailing a virtual interview, from your lighting setup to the way you maintain eye contact with the camera lens. We are moving from the system of the search to the psychology of the win. The virtual interview environment in 2026 is a far cry from the grainy, poorly lit video calls of the early 2020s. Today, committees expect a level of digital professionalism that mirrors an in-person boardroom presentation. Imagine if a student named Jordan, a pre-law applicant from Ohio, receives a notification that he is a finalist for the prestigious Lincoln Leadership Award. This award provides $15,000 per year, but the final hurdle is a 20-minute panel interview via a high-definition spatial streaming platform. Jordan doesn't just open his laptop and hope for the best. He understands that in 2026, His physical environment is his first set of credentials. Step by step, Jordan prepares his stage. First, he addresses the three-point lighting system. Historical trends show that committees subconsciously associate clear, bright lighting with transparency and confidence. He places his primary light source, a key light, at a 45-degree angle to his face, a fill light on the opposite side to soften shadows, and a subtle backlight to separate him from his background. He ensures his camera lens is exactly at eye level, which prevents the awkward downward angle that makes an applicant look small or the upward angle that feels condescending. In 2026, eye contact is not made by looking at the person on the screen. It is made by looking directly into the black circle of the camera lens. Jordan practices this until it feels natural, knowing that looking at the lens creates a psychological connection with the reviewers on the other end of the link. Next, Jordan performs an audio audit. In the 2026 scholarship landscape, poor audio quality is often a deal-breaker. If a committee has to strain to hear your story, they will eventually stop listening to the nuances of your message. Jordan uses a dedicated external microphone, rather than the built-in laptop mic, which often picks up internal fan noise or room echo. He tests his connection for packet loss, ensuring he has a wired Ethernet connection instead of relying on Wi-Fi, which can lag during high-traffic afternoon hours. Case studies of top-tier scholarship winners indicate that technical stability during the interview is frequently cited in panel notes as an indicator of a student's reliability and attention to detail. Once the tech is locked down, we move into the psychology of the STAR-L method. You likely know the STAR method: situation, task, action, and result, but for the competitive 2026 cycle, the L for learning is what secures the funding. Imagine the panel asks Jordan to describe a time he failed. A beginner might try to pivot to a fake failure like being a perfectionist. Jordan knows better. He describes a real situation where a community garden project he led in 2025 failed to meet its harvest goals because of a breakdown in the irrigation schedule he designed. He explains the task was to feed 50 local families. He details the action he took. He didn't just apologize. He stayed late to hand water the remaining crops and then rebuilt the digital scheduling system to include redundant alerts. He shares the result. They saved 60% of the crop. But then he delivers the L. He explains what he learned about the necessity of building fail-safes into leadership systems. This shows the committee that Jordan is not just a high achiever, but a resilient problem solver who can turn a deficit into a systemic improvement. The most critical moment of the interview is the opening question. Tell us about yourself. Most students use this as a chance to read their resume out loud. Jordan uses the three-part future casting framework. He spends 30 seconds on his past, highlighting the specific spark that led him to law. He spends 60 seconds on his present, detailing his current work with the Ohio mock trial team and his internship at a local legal aid clinic. He then spends the final 90 seconds on his future, specifically how this scholarship will allow him to focus on constitutional law, without the weight of predatory interest rates. He positions himself as an investment. He doesn't say, "I need this money." He says, "I am a vehicle for the mission of this foundation, and this funding is the fuel that will allow me to reach the finish line of my public service goals." Historical trends in scholarship interviews show that the final 5 minutes are often the most influential. This is when the committee asks if you have any questions for them. Never say no. Jordan has prepared 3 high-level questions that demonstrate his deep research into the foundation. He asks how the foundation has seen its alumni impact the legal field in the last 5 years, and he asks about the specific qualities the board values in their most successful scholars. This shifts the dynamic from an evaluation to a high-level professional dialogue. He isn't just waiting for their approval. He is demonstrating that he is already thinking like a member of their community. We must also address the curveball questions that have become common in 2026. Committees might ask, if you could solve one global problem by 2030 with unlimited resources, what would it be and why? Or, tell us about a time you had to change your mind after being presented with new evidence. These questions are designed to test your cognitive flexibility. Jordan handles these by using a technique called the pause and pivot. He takes a 3-second breath to show he is actually thinking, rather than reciting a canned response, and then he builds his answer around one of his 3 core pillars: ethics, innovation, or community. By grounding every answer in these pillars, his narrative remains consistent, even when the questions are unpredictable. Consider the post-interview protocol. In 2026, the speed of your follow-up is a proxy for your enthusiasm. Within 90 minutes of the call ending, Jordan sends a personalized email to the scholarship coordinator. He doesn't just send a generic thank you. He references a specific comment made by one of the panelists, perhaps a remark about the current state of maritime law or a shared interest in a particular Supreme Court case. This reinforces his presence as a real person, not just a digital avatar. He also ensures his digital master folder is updated, so that if the committee asks for a follow-up document or a secondary reference, he can provide it within 5 minutes. The psychology of the win is about more than just being the smartest person in the digital room. It is about being the most prepared, the most self-aware, and the most strategically aligned with the donor's vision. When Jordan closes his laptop after the interview, he isn't wondering if he did well. He knows he provided the committee with every possible reason to say yes. He has turned a stressful 20-minute encounter into a masterclass in professional branding. However, winning the scholarship is only half the battle. In the complex financial ecosystem of 2026, what happens after you receive the award letter can be just as impactful as the search itself. Many students celebrate a win, only to find out that their college is planning to subtract that amount from their existing aid package. This is the dark side of student finance that no one talks about. How do you protect your winnings from being absorbed by university bureaucracy? How do you read the fine print of an award letter to ensure the money is renewable for all 4 years? And if the money isn't enough, how do you use one scholarship win as leverage to negotiate a better deal from your university's financial aid office? In the next part, we are going to dive into the high-stakes world of the award letter analysis and the art of the financial aid appeal. We are moving from the thrill of the win to the discipline of the defense. The arrival of an award letter in your inbox is often a moment of celebration, but in the high-stakes environment of 2026, it is also the beginning of a complex negotiation. You must view this document not as a final offer, but as the opening bid in a multi-party financial arrangement. Historical trends indicate that students who simply accept the first offer without a forensic analysis of the fine print leave an average of several $1,000s on the table every single year. Imagine a student named Chloe from Charlotte, North Carolina. Chloe has been accepted into her top-choice private university, a prestigious institution where the total cost of attendance for the 2026 to 2027 academic year has been set at $85,000. When she opens her financial aid portal, she sees a headline figure of $45,000 in total aid. On the surface, it looks like a massive win. However, without a deep dive into the specific line items, Chloe could find herself in a precarious financial position by her sophomore year. Step 1 in the discipline of the defense is the cost of attendance audit. In 2026, many universities have become aggressive with their budget projections. You must distinguish between direct costs, which are paid directly to the school like tuition and fees, and indirect costs, such as books, transportation, and personal expenses. Universities often underestimate indirect costs to make the net price look more attractive. Chloe notices that the university has budgeted only $1,000 for books and supplies, despite the fact that her specialized architecture major requires expensive software licenses and physical modeling materials that historically cost over $3,000 annually. By identifying these discrepancies early, Chloe can build a case for an increase in her cost of attendance, which is the necessary first step to protecting her outside scholarships from being displaced. We then move to the categorization of the aid itself. You must separate gift aid from self-help aid. Gift aid includes grants and scholarships that do not need to be repaid. Self-help aid includes federal work study and loans. In 2026, many award letters utilize deceptive formatting that lumps Parent Plus loans in with scholarships to create a bottom line of zero. This is a common historical trend that obscures the true long-term cost. Chloe realizes that of her $45,000 in aid, $10,000 is actually a high-interest federal loan and $3,000 is a work-study position that is not a lump sum payment but rather a potential outcome based on her finding a campus job and working 20 hours a week. Her actual gift aid is only $32,000. This realization shifts her strategy from gratitude to tactical appeal. The most critical technical detail you must hunt for is the renewability clause. Case studies show that a significant percentage of institutional scholarships are front-loaded. A university might offer a $15,000 freshman scholarship that is non-renewable, or one that requires a 3.5 cumulative GPA to maintain. In the rigorous environment of a 2026 STEM or architecture program, maintaining a 3.5 GPA while working a part-time job is a high-risk endeavor. Chloe checks the fine print and discovers that her largest institutional grant is tied to her staying within the College of Architecture. If she decides to switch to urban planning in her second year, that money disappears. Understanding these GPA traps and major locks allows you to assess the stability of your funding over 4 years, not just one. Now we enter the realm of the financial aid appeal, also known as a professional judgment review. In 2026, the FAFSA uses tax data from 2 years prior, which means it may not reflect your family's current financial reality. An appeal is not a plea for mercy. It is a data-driven presentation of new information. Chloe's family experienced a significant medical expense in late 2025 that was not captured on their initial filings. Step by step, Chloe gathers the documentation, medical bills, insurance EOBs, and a concise letter explaining the impact on their liquid assets. She doesn't just send a vague email. She follows the specific institutional protocol for a professional judgment appeal, which usually involves a dedicated portal and a verification of special circumstances. But there is a second type of appeal that is even more powerful: the competitive offer leverage. Historical data suggests that universities, particularly private institutions, are often willing to match or exceed offers from peer institutions to secure a desirable candidate. Chloe received a more generous scholarship from a slightly lower-ranked school in Virginia. She doesn't hide this. Instead, she writes a professional letter to her dream school's financial aid director. She expresses her continued commitment to their program, but attaches the award letter from the competing school and asks if there is any additional institutional aid available to help close the gap. This is not seen as rude in 2026. It is seen as a student making a responsible financial decision. The potential outcome of this single email could be an additional $5,000 in annual grant aid. We must also return to the threat of scholarship displacement, which we touched on in previous sections but now must defend against with precision. Displacement happens when a school reduces your institutional aid because you won an outside scholarship. To fight this, Chloe uses the unmet need strategy. She looks at her total cost of attendance and her total aid. If there is a gap of $5,000, her $5,000 private scholarship from the local Rotary Club should go toward that gap. If the school tries to reduce her university grant instead, she points to the specific language in the school's 2026 policy handbook regarding outside resources. Some schools have recently moved toward a scholarship-first policy, where outside awards reduce the work-study or loan portion of the package before touching the grants. If Chloe's school isn't one of them, she requests that the outside scholarship be applied to a one-time educational expense, such as the purchase of a high-end laptop required for her architecture courses. This often allows the money to be processed without triggering a reduction in her main aid package. The final layer of the defense is the disbursement timeline. In 2026, many scholarships are not paid out until after the add-drop period of the semester. If Chloe's tuition is due on August 1st, but her private scholarship doesn't arrive until September 15th, she could face late fees or a registration hold. Step by step, she contacts the bursar's office with proof of her award and asks for a temporary deferment based on the anticipated outside aid. This prevents a logistical error from becoming a financial crisis. By the time Chloe finishes her audit, her appeal, and her displacement defense, she has transformed her financial package. She has increased her gift aid, secured a deferment for her outside awards, and obtained a written confirmation of the renewal criteria for her institutional grants. She is no longer just a student hoping things work out. She is a manager of her own educational capital. She has successfully navigated the bureaucracy that defeats so many other beginners. But even with a perfect financial aid package, the journey is not over. In 2026, the way you receive and spend this money has significant tax implications and long-term financial reporting requirements. Did you know that parts of your scholarship might be considered taxable income by the IRS? Or that mismanaging a refund check can lead to a loss of eligibility for future federal aid? As we move into the final stages of this masterclass, we are going to look at the wealth management phase of being a student. In the next part, we are going to dive into the tax and compliance protocol. We will explore how to track your expenses to maximize tax credits and how to ensure that your 2026 scholarship wins don't turn into a 2027 tax nightmare. We are moving from the defense of the award to the protection of your long-term financial health. The Internal Revenue Service does not view every dollar of scholarship funding through the same lens, and in the tax year of 2026, understanding this distinction is the difference between keeping your financial gains and facing an unexpected bill from the government. Most beginners assume that because a scholarship is a gift, It is entirely tax-exempt. This is a dangerous misconception that can lead to significant complications when you file your returns. Historically, the United States Tax Code has maintained a strict division between what it calls qualified education expenses and non-qualified expenses. If you do not categorize your spending correctly, you risk misreporting your income, which can impact your future eligibility for federal student aid. Imagine a student named Tyler from Seattle. In 2026, Tyler is a sophomore studying data science. He is a high achiever who successfully stacked multiple awards, resulting in a total of $40,000 in scholarship funding for the academic year. His university tuition and required fees amount to $25,000. The remaining $15,000 is sent directly to Tyler in the form of a refund check, which he uses to pay for his off-campus apartment, his meal plan, and a flight home for the holidays. Under the current tax laws, the $25,000 applied to his tuition is generally tax-free. However, the $15,000 used for room, board, and travel is considered taxable income. This is because the IRS defines room and board as personal expenses, not required educational costs. To navigate this, you must master the 1098-T tuition statement. Every January, your institution will provide this form, which acts as the primary record for your educational finances. In 2026, you must pay close attention to Box 1, which shows the payments received for qualified tuition, and Box 5, which shows the total amount of scholarships or grants processed by the school. If the number in Box 5 is greater than the number in Box 1, the difference is potentially taxable income that must be reported on your Form 1040. For Tyler, his Box 5 would show $40,000 while his Box 1 shows $25,000. That $15,000 gap must be listed as wages on his tax return, specifically noted with the initials SCH to indicate it came from a scholarship. Step by step, you need to implement a tracking system that begins the moment you receive your first award letter. In 2026, digital record keeping is your best defense. You should maintain a dedicated folder for every receipt related to your education. Qualified expenses include tuition, mandatory enrollment fees, and any books, supplies, or equipment that are specifically required for your courses. A key detail that many students miss is the requirement of the equipment. If Tyler buys a high-end laptop for his data science labs, and the course syllabus explicitly states that a laptop with those specific technical specifications is required for enrollment, that laptop may be considered a qualified expense. If he buys the laptop simply for convenience, it is likely non-qualified. Historical trends show that the IRS has become more stringent about these distinctions as technology has become ubiquitous in education. This brings us to the strategic coordination of tax credits, specifically the American Opportunity Tax Credit, or AOTC. In 2026, the AOTC remains one of the most valuable tools for students and their families, offering a maximum credit of $2,500 per eligible student. However, you cannot double dip. You cannot use the same tuition expenses to justify a tax-free scholarship and to claim a tax credit. This is where a high-level financial maneuver comes into play. In some case studies, it has been shown that students can actually come out ahead by intentionally reporting a portion of their scholarship as taxable income. Suppose Tyler's parents are eligible to claim him as a dependent and want to utilize the AOTC. If Tyler's scholarship covers 100% of his tuition, his parents would have zero qualified expenses to claim for the credit. However, if Tyler allocates $4,000 of his scholarship toward his taxable room and board instead of his tuition, he creates $4,000 in out-of-pocket qualified tuition expenses. He will have to pay a small amount of tax on that $4,000 of income, but his parents can then claim the full $2,500 AOTC. In many 2026 scenarios, the value of the tax credit far exceeds the cost of the tax on the scholarship income. This is a complex strategy that requires a thorough review of IRS Publication 970, which outlines the current year's tax benefits for education. You must also consider the impact on your future FAFSA applications. While taxable scholarship income is reported on your tax return and increases your adjusted gross income, the FAFSA includes a specific field where you can report that scholarship income separately. The federal formula then subtracts that amount so it does not count against your financial need calculation for the following year. If you fail to report it correctly on either the tax return or the FAFSA, you could appear wealthier on paper than you actually are, which could lead to a reduction in your need-based grants in 2027. Beyond the federal level, state-specific tax implications in 2026 vary wildly. Some states mirror the federal tax code, while others have their own definitions of taxable student income. If you are a student in a state with high income taxes, such as California or New York, the local tax burden on your scholarship refund can be substantial. You should set aside approximately 15 to 20% of any non-qualified scholarship funds in a high-yield savings account to ensure you have the liquidity to pay your tax bill in April. Treating your scholarship like a salary is the hallmark of a professional applicant. Another critical compliance factor involves the timing of your expenses. The IRS operates on a calendar year, while universities operate on an academic year. If you receive a large scholarship in December of 2026 but don't pay your spring semester tuition until January of 2027, you may face a massive tax liability for 2026 because the income was received in one year while the offsetting expense occurred in another. The step-by-step detail here is to ensure that your payments for the upcoming semester are processed in the same calendar year as the scholarship disbursement whenever possible. Most bursar offices allow for early payment for this exact reason. The discipline of the defense is about ensuring that the money you work so hard to find actually stays in your control. By auditing your 1098-T, tracking every syllabus-required book, and strategically coordinating your tax credits, you move from being a passive recipient to a sophisticated financial manager. You are protecting your long-term financial health and building a foundation of tax literacy that will serve you long after you graduate. But even with your taxes handled and your funding secure, there is one final threat to your scholarship success: the maintenance phase. Most students think that once they have the money, the work is over. They don't realize that in 2026, many scholarships have hidden maintenance clauses and ongoing reporting requirements that can cause the funding to be revoked mid-semester. What happens if your GPA slips by 1/10 of a point? What happens if you take a semester off for an internship? In the next part, we are going to dive into the scholarship maintenance protocol. We will explore the specific strategies for staying in compliance with your donors and how to handle the high-pressure situation of a scholarship probation. We are moving from the protection of your money to the preservation of your future. The maintenance of a scholarship is often more taxing than the initial search because it requires a sustained level of excellence under the mounting pressure of university-level coursework. In 2026, the automation of financial aid systems means that compliance is monitored by algorithms that do not account for a bad week or a difficult transition period. You must understand that a scholarship is a performance-based contract. Imagine a student named Jasmine from Atlanta, Georgia, who is attending a high-tier research university on a combination of institutional merit aid and 3 private scholarships. Jasmine starts her freshman year with immense momentum, but by the middle of her second semester, the reality of a pre-medical workload begins to set in. The first technical hurdle Jasmine faces is the GPA threshold. Historical trends show that most renewable scholarships require a minimum cumulative GPA, typically between a 3.0 and a 3.5. However, a common beginner mistake is failing to distinguish between a cumulative GPA and a semester GPA. Some high-stakes scholarships in 2026 have what is known as a floor clause, meaning if your GPA drops below the requirement for a single semester, the funding is immediately paused, regardless of how high your overall average remains. Jasmine finds herself in a situation where a particularly brutal organic chemistry course threatens to pull her semester average to a 2.9. Even though her cumulative GPA is still a 3.6, she is at risk of losing a $5,000 annual award because she did not read the specific semester-by-semester maintenance language in her award letter. Step by step, the maintenance protocol begins with the mid-semester audit. You should never wait for the final grade report to check your standing. In 2026, most universities provide real-time grade tracking. Jasmine sets a calendar alert for week 8 of the semester to calculate her projected GPA. If she is trending below the threshold, she immediately activates the intervention phase. This involves visiting her professor's office hours and the campus tutoring center. But more importantly, it involves documenting her efforts. Historical data from scholarship appeals shows that committees are far more likely to grant a one-semester grace period if the student can provide a paper trail showing they sought help before the grades were finalized. The second pillar of the maintenance protocol is the credit load requirement. To be considered a full-time student for federal and most private aid in 2026, you generally need to be enrolled in at least 12 credit hours. However, many institutional scholarships are tied to a 15 credit hour standard to ensure a 4-year graduation track. Imagine if Jasmine decides to drop a difficult 4-credit physics class to save her GPA, bringing her total credits for the semester down to 11. This move, while beneficial for her grades, would be a catastrophic financial error. The moment she drops below the 12 credit hour mark, her federal grants and private scholarships may be prorated or canceled entirely for that term. Before dropping any course, you must consult with a financial aid officer to understand the exact mathematical impact on your specific aid package. We must also discuss Satisfactory Academic Progress, or SAP. This is a federal standard that almost all universities apply to private aid as well. SAP is measured by two primary metrics: your GPA and your completion rate. In 2026, the standard completion rate is typically 67%. This means if you enroll in 30 credits over a year, you must successfully pass at least 20 of them. If you frequently withdraw from classes, even if your GPA remains high, you can lose eligibility for all financial aid. Case studies of students who lose their funding often reveal a pattern of late semester withdrawals that triggered an SAP violation. Jasmine maintains a spreadsheet tracking her attempted versus completed credits to ensure she never nears that 67% danger zone. A critical but often ignored aspect of maintenance is donor stewardship. In the 2026 scholarship market, donors are increasingly looking for engagement. If you are receiving money from a private foundation or a local community group, you are a representative of their brand. The step-by-step process for stewardship involves 3 touchpoints per year. First is the initial thank you letter, which should be sent within 2 weeks of receiving the award. This letter should be specific, detailing how the funds will directly impact your ability to study. Second is the mid-year progress report, a brief email in January sharing a highlight from your first semester. Third is the end-of-year impact statement, where you share your final grades and your plans for the summer. Historical trends indicate that students who maintain this line of communication are often the first to be considered for additional emergency funding or internship opportunities within the donor's network. Imagine if Jasmine's main private donor, a local engineering firm, sees her consistent updates and decides to offer her a paid summer internship. This is a potential outcome of high-level stewardship. In a digital world, a professional, well-written update is a rare commodity that builds significant social capital. What happens if the worst-case scenario occurs and you receive a notice of scholarship probation? First, do not panic. Probation is usually a warning, not a termination. The protocol for handling probation involves the formal letter of appeal. In 2026, an effective appeal letter must focus on 3 things: the extenuating circumstance, the corrective action, and the future outlook. If Jasmine's grades slipped because of a documented health issue or a family emergency, she must provide evidence, such as a doctor's note or a letter from a counselor. She then details the specific changes she is making, such as reducing her work-study hours or joining a structured study group. Finally, she provides a mathematical plan showing exactly how she will bring her GPA back above the threshold by the end of the next term. We must also address the portability problem. Many beginners assume they can take their scholarships with them if they transfer schools. Historical data shows that while federal and some private aid is portable, institutional aid is almost never transferable. If Jasmine decides to move from her current university to a school closer to home, she will likely lose her largest scholarship. Furthermore, some scholarships are major-specific. If she switches from pre-med to art history, she must check if her funding is tied to her enrollment in the College of Science. In 2026, these major locks are common in corporate-sponsored scholarships designed to build a talent pipeline for specific industries. Finally, you must be aware of the leave of absence protocol. If you need to take a semester off for a high-level internship, a study abroad program not sponsored by your school, or a personal reason, you must request a scholarship deferment in writing. Do not assume your money will be waiting for you when you return. Most foundations in 2026 allow for a 1 or 2 semester freeze on funding, provided you follow their administrative process before you stop attending classes. By mastering the maintenance protocol, you ensure that the hard-won victories of your application season aren't lost to a lack of oversight. You are treating your education as a professional engagement, where compliance and communication are just as important as your performance in the classroom. You have built the foundation, found the money, survived the interview, and defended your award. You are now a fully funded student with a clear path to graduation. But there is one final piece to this masterclass. The world of scholarships is constantly evolving, and new opportunities emerge every single day, even after you are already enrolled in college. How do you continue to find new money as a sophomore, junior, or senior? How do you leverage your current success to win even larger, more prestigious national fellowships? And most importantly, how do you pay this knowledge forward to build a legacy of debt-free education in your own community? In the final part of this series, we are going to unveil the ultimate 2026 scholarship master list and the continuous funding strategy that ensures you never have to worry about a tuition bill again. We are moving from the beginner's guide to the expert's life cycle. The transition from a scholarship seeker to a scholarship master requires a shift in perspective. You must stop viewing the pursuit of funding as a pre-college hurdle and start viewing it as a continuous professional life cycle. In the 2026 academic landscape, the most successful students are those who recognize that the largest volume of available money actually unlocks after you have already proven yourself on campus. This is the core of the continuous funding strategy. Imagine a student named Leo, a junior at a large research university in Michigan. Leo's freshman year was funded by a mix of federal aid and one-time local scholarships. However, as he entered his sophomore and junior years, he noticed that many of his peers were taking on more debt to cover the rising costs of housing and specialized equipment. Leo did the opposite. He recognized that as a student with a proven GPA and a track record of campus involvement, he had moved into a higher tier of eligibility. Step by step, the continuous funding strategy begins with the departmental deep dive. Every major academic department, whether it is engineering, nursing, or the fine arts, manages its own specific endowment funds. In 2026, these funds are often underutilized because students assume their financial aid is handled entirely by the central university office. Leo scheduled a meeting with his department head and the undergraduate coordinator. He discovered that because he was now a declared mechanical engineering major with a focus on sustainable energy, there were 4 niche scholarships specifically for upperclassmen in his field that had fewer than 10 applicants each. Historical trends indicate that departmental awards are more likely to have a potential outcome of success because the selection committee is made up of your own professors. They aren't just looking at a name on a screen. They are looking at the student they see in the front row of their lectures every Tuesday morning. The second phase of the life cycle is professional association integration. By 2026, industry organizations have significantly increased their scholarship outlays to address labor shortages in high-tech and specialized sectors. Leo joined the American Society of Mechanical Engineers and 2 regional trade groups. He didn't just pay the student membership fee. He volunteered to help moderate their digital forums and attended their virtual conferences. This level of engagement allowed him to access members-only scholarship portals. Case studies of successful upperclassmen show that being an active member of a professional organization provides a massive competitive advantage. When the selection committee sees that an applicant is already contributing to the industry, they view the scholarship as a way to support a future colleague rather than just a student. As you move toward your final years of undergraduate study, you enter the arena of national fellowships. These are the big leagues of the scholarship world. We are talking about the Goldwater Scholarship for STEM students, the Truman Scholarship for those dedicated to public service, and the Boren Awards for international study. In 2026, these fellowships have moved toward a holistic evaluation model that prioritizes your ability to solve complex, interdisciplinary problems. Leo began preparing his Goldwater application 18 months before the deadline. This is a critical detail. National fellowships are not something you can whip up in a weekend. They require a faculty mentor, a research proposal, and a series of institutional endorsements. The potential outcome of winning a national fellowship extends far beyond the monetary award. It places you in a global network of scholars and provides a level of prestige that can influence your graduate school admissions and future salary negotiations. To manage this expert-level life cycle, you must refine your scholarship master list into a dynamic, multi-year forecast. This list should not just be a collection of links. It should be categorized by eligibility windows. For example, some scholarships are only for students with exactly 60 credits, while others are reserved for seniors who have been accepted into a graduate program. Leo's 2026 master list includes a bridge funding section, small grants of $1,000 to $2,000 that cover the gap between semesters or pay for professional certification exams. By mapping out these opportunities years in advance, you remove the element of surprise and replace it with a systematic pipeline of applications. We must also address the multiplication effect. This is the psychological and professional phenomenon where winning one scholarship makes it significantly easier to win the next. Committees in 2026 are risk-averse. They want to see that other organizations have already vetted you and found you worthy of investment. When Leo lists his previous 3 scholarship wins on a new application, he is providing social proof. He is no longer an unproven freshman. He is a certified scholar. You can leverage this by starting small. Win a $500 local essay contest. Use that win to secure a $2,000 departmental award. And use those two to position yourself for a $10,000 national fellowship. This is the stacking loop that historical trends suggest leads to the most comprehensive funding packages. But as you reach the pinnacle of the scholarship world, you have a responsibility that goes beyond your own bank account. In 2026, the concept of paying it forward has become a literal component of many scholarship missions. Organizations want to know how you will use your knowledge to help others navigate the same path. Leo began hosting scholarship workshops for freshmen in his dormitory, sharing the same frameworks he used to secure his funding. He didn't just tell them to apply for everything. He taught them the narrative engine and the digital audit techniques. This act of mentorship served two purposes. It helped his community, and it provided him with leadership impact data for his own future applications. It is a virtuous cycle that reinforces your value as a leader. As we conclude this 10-part masterclass, let us look at the broader picture. You started this journey overwhelmed by the astronomical costs of American higher education. You were looking for a way through a wall. Over the course of these sessions, you have dismantled that wall brick by brick. You have learned how to categorize the 4 pillars of aid, how to audit your digital footprint, how to craft a narrative that an AI cannot replicate, and how to defend your awards against the bureaucracy of displacement and taxation. You have moved from a state of financial anxiety to a state of strategic mastery. The year 2026 is a time of immense challenge, but it is also a time of unprecedented opportunity for those who are willing to do the deep work. The billions of dollars in available funding are not going to find you. You must find them, and you must prove that you are the best possible steward of those resources. You are now equipped with a professional grade system that less than 1% of students ever take the time to learn. But remember, the landscape of education and finance is never static. As you move into your career or graduate studies, the rules will shift again. New technologies will emerge, tax codes will be rewritten, and the global economy will demand new sets of skills. The true value of this masterclass is not just the money you will find today, but the mindset of strategic research and relentless pursuit that you will carry for the rest of your life. You are no longer a beginner. You are a professional navigator of the American dream. What happens next is entirely up to you. Will you take this information and file it away? Or will you open your spreadsheet right now and begin the first audit of your 2026 academic cycle? The data is clear. Those who take immediate action are 10 times more likely to see a favorable potential outcome than those who wait. However, there is one final black swan event we haven't discussed: the sudden, unexpected loss of funding due to institutional restructuring or economic shifts. How do you recession-proof your education if the market crashes in 2027? How do you build a financial emergency protocol that keeps you in the classroom even when the scholarships aren't enough? In our upcoming advanced series, we will dive into the anti-fragile student framework, exploring the intersection of scholarship stacking, high-income skill development, and the hidden economy of campus life. The masterclass is over, but your education in the science of the win has only just begun.